To inspect the condenser, I needed to remove the front nose. But finally, to gain access, you have to remove this air dam. That exposes the condenser and the radiator. I want to pressure test the air conditioning. You get these hoses. Oh, I think they're about £70 on eBay. The blue, low pressure. Red is high pressure. These connect on my Porsche 1986. They connect here and here. They're different sizes. Put it on, clip it into place. My system is already empty. To open up the Schrader valve that allows pressure to go into the air conditioning system, turn clockwise. That presses the Schrader valve down. Then through the yellow hose, I'm going to connect that to my air cylinder I use for diving. I'm going to bring the gauges up to about 100 psi. Both open at the moment. Just by physically holding these two together and putting air into the system, I've managed to get just over 100 psi. I've seen this done on YouTube in America, and they just use an ordinary air compressor. I'm using my dive cylinder because it's more convenient and it's dry air. As soon as I've got the pressure, I needed to turn off both of these valves so the pressure stayed in the system. I know the compressor leaks, but I found a leak also in the condenser. It appears to be two leaks. One from just below this pipe here, and then another one just here on this upper pipe. I'm removing the condenser, this bit here. I'm leaving this in the bumper, and then underneath I have to remove that panel there. That panel is attached with 4 bolts. They're on a strip. Let's see what they look like. So there's 2 of those strips, and then there is 1, 2, 3 more bolts to be removed. This is the air conditioning lines coming in. This one is a 19mm, and this one's 22mm. Just there you can see a hole. That's where I've removed 1 bolt, and then I'm in the process now of removing that final bolt. At the top here there's another 2 fittings, one there and one on the other side. That's obviously a rubber plug that fits in there, and that will have, I guess, a pin that just simply slots down into that rubber plug. The condenser from Design 911 arrived in a massive box within which there was another box within which the condenser's located. Comparing them side by side, they definitely look like an exact replacement. I obviously need to remove the rubbers and put them on the new one. That's just a little bit more difficult to remove. I was able to gently push it up, levering it back a bit like that. I was able to slip it in. In the same way, trying to push it up further, that one bracket touches that, and then the base touches then, but I know because I've done it, if I pull back on the bumper bit, then it'll bend out of the way. I now have the condenser past that bit, and that bracket there past the bit of the bumper. Now I've got that side past the bumper. You can see it's too high to fit for the pin to fit in the rubber, so I'm going to have to pull the bumper away and then align that with the pin so it goes in place. This one here, there's still plenty of room, so that's not an issue. So that wasn't too much of a problem. Using my right hand to pull the bumper away, and then using my left hand I was able to position that and get it on the rubber. And similarly here now, this should just fit nicely on that pin. Now I'm left with just 2 bolts, one that side, one there. Now on this side, I had to cut the bolt off because the captive nut broke away. I'm going to, because it's really difficult to get at the back, it's an enclosed space except for one small bit, I'm going to use a cable tie. I know some people are not happy, but that's what I'm going to do. And there it is, suitably tied in place with a cable tie. And that's it in place, without too much effort. Removing the compressor. To be honest, there's just a great video by Adridas. I think it's called Repairing My Air Conditioning and Cruise Control on my 924S, and he shows you how to remove this. The only thing I'd say is you've got to remove both of these air conditioning lines from the compressor in order that you can properly gain access to the 17mm bolt. It's a bolt without a nut on the back, and the 13mm bolt again without a nut on the back. Looking at the parts diagram from the manual, shows all the O-rings and fittings. The O-rings I've bought from Porsche and that I'm going to replace, because I've replaced the condenser. There's an O-ring number 10, that one there, and an O-ring number 8. These O-rings here, O-ring 8 and O-ring 36, were provided with the kit from Griffiths. But I've bought the O-rings that I need, including those, from Porsche. That's the packet of O-rings I got, and you buy them individually, and that's equivalent to the number of 8s on the diagram. They just happen to be purple and not green. These little ones here, again purple, not green, and they're equivalent to number 10 from the aircon diagram. And these are equivalent to number 36 on the diagram. But in this case, these are green and not purple. And I know these fit because I've tried them. They suggest you check for 3 things. One is the clutch, and I've checked that and it does operate. It clicks in. The other one is check the bearing. There's no movement. There's a little funny little noise, but that's because that wasn't there originally until I cleaned it, and I think there's a couple of little bits that have got inside. But I think the bearing's okay. And then the other thing to check were these ports, to check that it was sucking or blowing. I don't know if you can hear that. They definitely appear to be sucking and blowing. So that's the first test over with. Now I'm going to strip it, put the seals in. With me holding it just with a gloved hand and using an impact driver. It's a 12mm nut, and that came off really easy. So I'm just tapping where the rivets are, was a suggestion. Having removed that nut, and actually, by the look of it, some very, very gentle tapping, it would appear to have started moving. So a little washer. So what we've got so far is a nut, which was 12mm, spring washer, followed by that clutch. It's a keyway, and also in front of there was the small washer. The small washer going on that spindle there. Now you can see there is a circlip which I'll remove. I'll remove the circlip. It's a big thing there. And just simply put on the puller. No effort at all. All I did was wind it in by hand and it started to come. So I'll just take that off now. That's come off there. That doesn't sound too bad to me. there is now another circlip down there to be removed. Having removed that circlip, this electromagnet just simply came loose, but I need to remove these electrical connections in order that I can remove the electromagnet. Having removed that, let's expose the casing, that locating pin, whether it's an inner or outer seal. I think it was an outer one. It has a circlip inside. And that appears to have a circlip in there. I had to use a breaker bar on these Allen headed bolts that go all the way through, and that is the same Allen head bolt. I'll remove those. What you can see here is a felt washer. Well, there's a couple of good videos, one by a 928 guy, and which is okay, and another one, I think it's called Denso 10p seal replacement, and it's by Century Bob. They're a air conditioning specialist, I think, and he makes reference to this felt washer, though also feels it isn't necessary to replace it. I removed this felt washer with some tweezers, and it's just felt held in place by some spring steel. I'll put that one to one side. And now it's much easier to see the circlip in the bottom and get to it. Removing that key wasn't that easy. After a reasonable amount of fiddling, I managed to get the circlip to release. So that's out. And now I'll remove the bolts and slide this top part off. The Griffiths kit comes with the 3 large O-rings that go there, there and there when you've dismantled it. It comes with the 4 rings that fit on this port here when this is removed. So there are 4 O-rings in there. It comes with these 2 O-rings, which are the O-rings that should fit in here and here on the when I put the replacement hoses in. It also comes with that O-ring. That O-ring fits on this steel spacer. The circlip, which I've just removed from inside there, and 5 replacement washers which go on these long bolts that's taken out from here and here. So 5 of those. And then finally, that's the carbon seal for the shaft, which will come out in a minute. But note, it says the thick metal spacer is the race, polished side of the race with recessed groove on face must face black carbon. So that's the recessed groove that isn't. So that faces the carbon that's in there. I haven't taken that out because you have to be very careful about that and careful about contamination. You'll need to be careful because that pin actually comes out. I've got to tap out the race and the carbon bearing. This plate has an F on it, which I presume stands for front. And I missed it, but there are actually 2 pins on this piece. I feel I should have removed this manifold first before doing the front part, so I'm going to do that now. I've removed the manifold screws or bolts, so you can see now where the 4 green O-rings will go. If I rotate that shaft, they just sound very smooth. Just roll it over and the back part of the case comes off like so. That's the old O-ring, and that again is pinned. And that plate says rear on it. Now I just need to split this casing so that I can replace the other back ring in there. So far I've just tapped that 3 or 4 times, top and bottom, and you can see that it's already splitting there. A few more taps and it started to split, and now I can remove it by hand quite easily. So pulling it apart, you need to be careful, because on this shaft is a washer, and this race with needle bearings. I'm going to oil the rings a little bit with this ester oil that I bought. This is supposed to be 100 weight, though I can't see anywhere on it that says 100 weight. And then it does say that it can be used with R12 or R134A air conditioning systems. Place the O-ring in there, and then to get the part back together, I've just tapped it with the heel of my hand until it's closed that gap. So I'm reasonably happy with that. I'm trying to turn this and it's easy, and then it seems to stick a little bit. So I'm a little concerned that putting this piece back on, or this together, is just a tad off. So I'm going to have to split it again. I'll check the dowels to make sure it's all easy, because it should feel the same all the way around. It did when I started, it doesn't now. There's a little bit of corrosion in that pin where the pin seats in the recess, so I've run the Scotch-Brite round just in case it's just making it a little bit offset, and I'll do the same in this area here. And now it's spinning evenly. It's feeling okay all the way around without any tight points, so I'm much happier. So I've polished up the front part of the compressor. You can also see that it's corroded in places where the O-ring would fit. So I'm going to polish all that up and try not to get any on the inside. I think the actual mating surface within the groove wasn't too bad and polished up okay. It's a similar sort of issue on the back in the groove, but again probably not too bad that I can't polish that out. This back part of the compressor is definitely the worst for corrosion. I'll keep polishing. I couldn't feel the recesses. Well, they're there. So there's one there and one on the other side. And the carbon bearing has to slot onto there. You can just see the old seal. It's quite easy to move around, and obviously the spring tension has gone completely. It's also a bit rusty. And then I need to tap that out, which I'll do. I tried using a drift to get it out by hitting the side and then that side, but it just wouldn't seem to come. It just it twisted in there. So I thought I'd try this, and it seems to be working really well because it's putting equal pressure on it. The inside of here, where the bearing goes and seal, is a little bit corroded. So again, I'm going to clean it out with this Scotch Brite. The kit comes with this spacer. This bit here with the recess will go against the carbon seal. So this bit will face up into the, it'll face up like that inside there. It's different to this one. I've got the O-ring for there, but it's different to this one. If you look, because this one has this extra lip on top. That lip allows the use of special tools to remove bearing here is from the outside, so you don't have to take the whole unit apart. Following Century Bob's advice, there's a flat. I've actually scratched a little arrow there, but I'll just mark it with a marker pen, which doesn't show up, so I'm glad I scratched it. And similarly on this side, where the flat is opposite, I've scratched a mark just so that I know where it is. For when I put the carbon bearing on, or carbon seal on. So to install it, put that on first and locate it on those there. with that located on those two nipples, and then add this piece in, like so. I've obviously already put the green O-ring in, and then finally to put this top piece on, again lining up on those dowels. You can also see when it's on that that pin there is at the top where the manifold would be. And looking down there carefully, I can probably mark on the top here where those flats are. It would probably have been better if I'd have done the back piece first rather than this way round. Put the dowels in first. This back piece goes on where the dowels are, with the R facing for rear. This one's already stayed in place, so that's okay on those dimples. If you don't get this the right way up, the pins are obviously offset because it doesn't fit properly. So there is only one way which you can put this together. By turning it round, then it's now properly centered on the back. And the back fits on that way up with the Nippondenso manufacturer's name reading up right under the manifold, or where the manifold will go. The 5 bolts go back in with the new copper washers provided in the kit. These all have to be tightened to 23 foot-pounds. I'm just gently tightening these up proportionally, missing out alternate ones. So that it gets gradually brought together. Now I'll transfer it to the vise and do it to 23 foot-pounds. So this is the scary bit. This is supposed to be quite delicate. And Century Bob says you can't touch it with your fingers. You've got to use latex gloves. I don't have latex gloves. I have only got vinyl gloves, which I hope is going to be good enough. He also says it's a carbon ceramic and you have to make sure it's well lubricated with mineral oil. I'm going to use 3-in-1. Yeah, I can see there that bit and that bit there, those flats have to engage with the flats in here. And as I say, I'm using 3-in-1. And then this just slides on, right. And then you can just touch those tangs to push it on. Well, that was really hard. I think I've got it. You've got 3 tangs, but you're pressing down on them, and then you get to resistance, which I think is the O-ring pulling over the final part. So it becomes very springy. And then you just decide after about 15 minutes, you're just going to put a bit of pressure on. And then it sort of slurps on. And I found the way to test, I think the way to test that it is actually on those flats is if you try move that black carbon ceramic seal by just twisting one way or twisting the other, and if it won't move, it'll be attached to this spindle. You have to put this piece in with an O-ring, and with this bit with the groove in, that has to face the carbon. So that goes in this way, and I think Century Bob suggests you get the right size socket to press on top to push it down so it doesn't go skew-iffed. The right size socket for me was a spark plug socket. And yes, I think I can see where this spring clip needs to go. Looking at the manifold I removed, again you can see there's corrosion that's obviously got inside or past those O-rings. So it's just going to be a cleaning process again, and hopefully we can get a proper seal with the new green rings. To clean inside the recesses that take the sealing O-rings, I used a Scotch-Brite pad and cocktail stick, and I did the same on the main unit itself. I used a wooden cocktail stick so I didn't scratch the aluminium. I've cleaned all these ports, but to be honest, with all the effort that's been involved in cleaning this unit because it didn't have any oil in it, I wish in retrospect I'd just got a reconditioned unit, or had mine reconditioned. I'm not sure how well that would turn out, with a guarantee, and it would have been a lot easier. So as interesting as this might have been, I wouldn't do it again. On my 86 944, the low pressure and high pressure ports are actually next to the suspension struts in the engine bay, both of them. So I'm just going to replace this because it might leak. I couldn't find a torque setting for the manifold, so I set it at 23 foot-pounds, the same as these settings here. At the beginning of this video, I said one of the tests was to check for compression and suction. I finished installing all the bits on the compressor. I checked and I'd got compression, but I hadn't got any suction. I didn't know why that was, so I installed it in the car, put the vacuum pump on, couldn't pull a vacuum, then pressure tested the system, and I could hear air gushing out of presumably the bearing behind here. So I've taken it off, took all these gubbins off the clutch, removed the circlip that's holding the bearing in, and really I don't think that was seated properly at all. I used the socket again to push harder on the basis I'd got nothing to lose, and managed to push the race that was on top of the carbon ceramic seal just that little bit further down, put the circlip back, which then clipped in very nicely into place. I then tested again these ports, and you can see I've got compression, but also I've now got suction. I'm going to reinstall it, and let's hope that did the trick. As I said before, I really don't think I would do this again. It's been an awful lot of effort, and particularly getting that bearing in place. I'd much rather buy one with a 12-month guarantee for £350. So I've just drawn down a vacuum in the system, and I'm going to go away and see what it's like in 30 minutes. This is an hour and a half later and we're still holding pressure. Online it was suggested you can test your system with any of these aerosols that they use for cleaning computers, computer keyboards. The one you're looking for, it has to sound that it contains 152A difluoroethane. I found this one did online, eBay, can't remember how much. Also, you need to buy that clamp that comes from China. You can't buy those here. You squeeze it together and it pierces the can just there, and then you can connect up to your lines as you would do A134A. Just to show you how this operates, it's got a pin and a rubber, and then you put that on the can at the chosen point, and it's never looked good. And simply quick press like a pair of scissors. It's got a clip here to hold it in place, and then it's just a question of connecting it and testing. So the process is to turn your engine on, 5 ounces of ester oil in the compressor to get around the system. And then making sure this is turned off, that's a high pressure, don't push it. You open up the valve to the low pressure side. It's not much pressure in there, but the refrigerant, and I can feel how cold this is. There's more in there, so I'm just shaking it to go down. It has gone in. But the idea is that you can suck it in. And certainly the clutch is operated. I'm really pleased about that. Increase the revs a little bit. I can feel it getting cold. with what's in there to see whether or not the whole system holds up before I charge it with our 134A. Since using some of this stuff in the Porsche's air conditioning as a test, I thought I'd do a bit more online research. Two things: Falcon make it, and then other individuals put their logos and stuff on it. So you can still find on eBay Falcon dust off, or you'll find it under different names, but if they all seem to have this same logo on. I went on the Falcon dust off site and got their safety data sheet, and even where it doesn't state on the can that it contains dichloroethane, which I understand is 152A, if it's this stuff, Falcon dust off, then it will contain difluoroethane. So if I was going to buy some more cans, I'd just be looking for this logo here. Whether you use this stuff or not is entirely up to you. This is really for my own edification. I'm not recommending it. I'm not saying use it permanently. I'm just using it as a test. The research I did also indicates that R152A is in actual fact considered as an alternative to R134A, and that is because R134A is going to be phased out. So it would appear that 152A is a possible alternative to R134A. Another interesting fact I came across was that according to the factory shop manual, this was quoted by some other individual on the Pelican forum, the low side pressure and the high side pressures are for R12. R134A would operate at slightly higher pressures than indicated, but an important consideration is that in the case of our 944s, the high pressure cutout switch triggers at 40 psi on the low side. So if filling the system to a higher pressure than 40 psi, or not far below it, so that increases when your engine's revving, then you could have the air conditioning system cycling, cutting in and out. And evidently our air conditioning systems, unlike modern ones, are not intended to cut in and out. The compressor should be operating at all times.